Nothing like the biggest first round comeback ever to kick off another year of exciting March Madness action here on the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On College Basketball, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What is up, folks? Happy late.
Andy, hang on. First off, that was an incredible cold open.
Right.
So well done.
Nailed it,
I mean,
right?
Next level.
What's up, folks? Welcome into a very late Thursday night. Very, very, very. It is still Thursday for me. I think the vast majority of people listening, if you are listening live, it is Friday for you. But what an incredible first day of the college basketball NCAA tournament. So excited to be here. I'm Andy Patton, joined here by my co-host, Isaac Shade. You're listening to us on the #1 sports podcasting network, Locked On. And of course, today's episode brought to you by Mazda. Mazda puts that same drive into every detail. Wins are what define the moment, but putting in the work, that is what defines you. So stay tuned for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. First day of the big dance, one of the best days of the year, and it fully delivered. Isaac, what an incredible slate of games. We got almost more upsets on Thursday than we did all of last year. If you were worried that Cinderella was gone, it is back, baby. We saw some fantastic games. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into the North Carolina loss to VCU, blowing a 19-point lead. We're going to talk about how Siena nearly took it to Duke in what would have been one of the most extraordinary upsets in the history of this sport, although the Boozers get it done down the stretch. We also had a 12-5 upset, as we do almost every single year with High Point over Wisconsin. We're going to get into all those and a handful of other results as well. And again, we're going to have big breakdowns after the Sweet 16 is set on our Bracket Breakdown show as part of Amazon Fire TV on Sunday and Monday with our good friend Kylan Mills, as well as Gordon Hayward and Jesse Hawley. So look out for those over the weekend. Isaac, we got to start with what looked like was not going to be much of a mystery here. We had already seen Louisville take care of business in their 6-11 game. That was the trendy upset pick. Whereas VCU, North Carolina, not as trendy of an upset pick. And it sure looked like the Tar Heels were rolling, comfortably cruising, 19-point lead in the second half. And then things unraveled very, very quickly for Hubert Davis's team. Ends up with a stunning loss after scoring just 3 points in overtime. Disastrous result for the Tar Heels. Big time win for two teams in the A-10, but of course, in this case, the VCU Rams.
Yeah, Andy, I mean, just an epic meltdown. As you said in the cold open here, according to CBS Sports' Matt Norlander, the 19-point comeback by VCU is the largest ever in the history of the first round, specifically of the NCAA tournament. Like, that is epic. And Andy, for North Carolina, if we zoom out big picture for just a second before any details, the problem is there are just 2 times in the history of North Carolina basketball now that they have lost in the NCAA tournament when leading by double digits at halftime. The other one also happened under Hubert Davis's watch, but on an even bigger stage in the national championship game in 2022 when they were up by 15 to Kansas. So 2 different forms of ignominy here for the Tar Heels all happening. And Andy, for this proud program, this is now, if we include the COVID year where the tournament didn't happen, but North Carolina wasn't going to make it, Andy, the Tar Heels have been bounced in the first round or didn't even make the tournament in 5 of the last 7 seasons. Like, yeah, that's a thing.
Yeah, it's been rough. I mean, I think obviously the Caleb Wilson story is going to be kind of I don't want to say excuse that Hubert Davis is going to use or that this team is going to use because, you know, Caleb Wilson not being in this game is not why they blew a 19-point halftime lead.
No,
like, you know what I mean? Like, if they had lost in a different way, maybe you could point to that as being a thing. But for this team, I mean, they've had so much talent. It hasn't been an issue of not having talent. I mean, you look at the caliber of player that's been through the system in the last 5 years, guys like Seth Trimble and, of course, Armando Bacot and many other just tremendously talented players. And so you just haven't seen that success carry over into the NCAA tournament. You've had the #1, preseason #1 team that doesn't make the tournament, which is a very rare thing in and of its own. And now, of course, another 10-point halftime lead that gets blown. Like, it's just a really disappointing thing for them. And just as it often is when you see a mid-major team, and again, VCU not necessarily being your typical one bid league type of team coming from the A10, but still a program that wasn't expected to win this game. And when that happens, usually somebody goes off. And in this case, Terrence Hill, my goodness, 34 points for him in this basketball. He played 40 minutes. He didn't start. He did not start this game, and he played 40 minutes. That is, you do not see that very often. Obviously, this game going into overtime is why, but still, that is absurd. He had 7 threes in this game. Just a ridiculous performance. Those are the kind of things, like, this is why we want the upsets. This is why you want to see these kinds of things happen. I mean, to see a player like this, it's not Jack Golke hitting 10 threes for a program that, is in a one bid league, but it's still something that you don't expect to see on any given night. And that's what makes it so fun.
Yeah, and Andy, it's funny because you talk about all those minutes played, and that's part of the storyline for North Carolina. We will get into a more extreme version of this in just a second when we talk about Siena. But for the Tar Heels, Andy, you had a team that in the second half of this game, Derek Dixon, Seth Trimble, Henry Vasar, Jaron Stevenson played the entire 20 minutes. And in overtime, that same quartet played the entire 20 minutes. Luka Bogovac played 15 minutes of the second half, but then Jonathan Powell played the other. So just 6 Tar Heels played in the second half of this game, and only 5 Tar Heels played in overtime. And Hubert Davis post-game seemed to suggest that wasn't a factor. It was clearly a factor for this team who committed 1 turnover in the first half and then had 6 in the final 11 minutes of regulation. Things fell apart. And Andy, unfortunately for the Tar Heels, it was a lot of the same themes that we've seen bother them throughout this season, whether it was free throws where they were 8 of 10 to start the game and finished 12 of 20, whether it was getting way up on a team and then struggling to shut off the water late, right? You saw a lot of those things. And now I think, Andy, big picture, there's going to be a lot of questions asked in and around Chapel Hill about a head coach that, let's remember, a lot of the majority of this season went really well until the Caleb Wilson injury, where they're now 5-4 since then. But Hubert Davis entered this season on most people's hot seat lists, and you got to ask questions about where he's at now.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, again, the season going well cooled the seat, but it didn't, it's not ice. You know what I mean? Like, it's still simmering a little bit. And at this point, I think you have to start to have that question. It doesn't necessarily mean he's gone, but like, it's been a lot more disappointment than not under Hubert. And you mentioned the playing time, and I think that does lead nicely into our next conversation, because while this game for North Carolina was kind of a microcosm of a lot of things that have happened for them this year, that's not really true of Duke versus Siena. So many of the things that happened in this game were things we had not seen at all. This was a shockingly strange game from Cameron Boozer. He kind of played timidly in a lot of ways and just wasn't the player we're used to seeing him be. Obviously, this Duke team is not fully healthy. That has been a big storyline with Pat Gongba not playing and Caleb Foster out indefinitely at this point. But Duke survives 71-65, the final score here. It's a 6-point win. That doesn't look good, but that almost undersells what happened. Duke was down most of this game, Isaac. It really truly felt like there was a real chance that they were going to lose this game. They quickly I think they were down as many as 13. They caught back to tie it early in the second half, and it kind of felt like, okay, in my mind, I thought, okay, Duke's going to end up winning this game by 15 plus. Like, they're just going to roll and steadily build a lead. And then that never happened. And Siena did that and stayed in this game and fought all the way to the end, playing just 5 dudes until the last 10 seconds of the game.
Yeah, Andy, like it's almost more funny that they had one substitute who played a grand total of 2 seconds. That's it. The starters played what would it be, like total 200 minutes? Is that what, like, right? So it was so Siena starters played 159 minutes and 58 seconds of this basketball game, right? Like, and I get it. Like, if I heard McNamara talk about it, it was basically like, hey, we got 7 scholarship dudes and the 2 we didn't really use, just, it wasn't going to make sense. So we thought even basically like a lessened version of our starters were the ones that gave us the best chance. And when you talk about teams trying to spring an upset, they do crazy stuff sometimes, right? Whether it's bombing away or something like this. So I applaud Coach McNamara for saying, look, if we want any chance to compete with Duke, we're just going to keep our dudes on the floor, and really, really well done there. The probably frustrating part for Siena is where it all started to fall apart was when they missed back-to-back wide open dunks on the same possession. I think that was actually when they were up 13. That was going to put them up 15. And then it was like Duke goes on an immediate 11-0 run after that point. And as you said, kudos to Siena for pushing it back out. I think they got it back up to 6 at one point, but just didn't have enough. And like ultimately, yes, congrats to Siena. This is good. But I think the bigger story is probably about what this means for Duke going forward in this tournament, where we were already concerned about the path that they had to get to a national championship, which I guess I should say one other thing about Siena. Syracuse, don't hesitate, don't delay a single second. Get Jerry McNamara right now, especially since Brian Hodgson's already said, right, he's staying at South Florida. Is that correct? Am I remembering that?
Yep, you are correct. And that's what I was going to say. That was the point I was going to make is when John Shire said after the game that congrats to Coach McNamara, he out-coached me. Like, that clip needs to be sent to Syracuse's front office and say, for the love of God, hire this man. Like, you were going to compete against him, and he already admitted that he has been out-coached by him. Like, this is a slam dunk, no pun intended, for Syracuse. Again, I hate it for Siena when these kinds of things happen and your coach ends up moving on it. Obviously, we don't know if that's going to happen, but for so many reasons, it's a pretty obvious pick for this team.
Can Jerry McNamara dunk?
You know, I don't know. Probably not now, but maybe. Who knows?
It's a slam dunk player who might not be able to slam dunk. We'll find out.
Yes, right. No, I was a little alarmed by the Boozer performance in this game. Like, not overwhelmingly concerned by it, but it did feel like the absence of Gangba played a pretty significant role for him on both ends of the floor. I think it caused him to get more attention defensive. I mean, he already gets a lot of attention, but not have an outlet in that way. I think defensively, not having that shot blocker in the same way. And Malik Brown was in foul trouble, which is a big issue as well. It's so rare for Boozer to have games where he doesn't just look like it's so polished and sharp. And, you know, even when he has like off shooting nights, he just controls the game. And it kind of felt like at times he didn't in this game. And that was unusual. I certainly wouldn't hit the panic button. Players are allowed to have one bad game. And I think the fact that it's very rare for us to talk about bad Boozer games is a positive sign for him overall. But it was not a good time for him to have a rough game. And I'm curious to see now how he responds to that adversity in their next game.
Yeah. Because that's the thing for me. It's like, on one hand, I could say, boy, this is the wake-up call Duke needed, and now they're going to roll, assuming that Patrick Gungba is healthy, although, of course, he was still in his boot with his rolly cart on Thursday. Right. But on the other hand, it's like, oh, dude, you're about to face TCU and David Punch that could punch you. And then it's Kansas or St. John's, and then it's Michigan State or UK. You know, you got like all of that ahead of you now. And so there's worry. And then you got Malik Brown admitting at halftime, we thought it was going to be a cakewalk going into this game. And it's just like, first off, media training, buddy, like you don't say that. I don't care how true that is. That's not coming out of your mouth ever. But I gotta say, Andy, it makes me concerned for the psyche. Like, where is the mindset of this team?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think that comment in particular was incredibly noteworthy. And I wouldn't jump to dramatic, like, what does this say about John Shire or anything like that? But no. In terms of where this team's at right now, with the injuries that they have and the youth of this team and coming off of this really ugly performance, like, yeah, the vibes are not great. And they're going to most likely play a very, very tough team in either Kansas or St. John's. We don't know. Or excuse me, they're going to have the 8-9 first. I think they'll get by that game, but like, yeah, they got a tough road ahead of them.
All right, Andy, several crazy stats from ESPN. Duke is the first ever 1 seed to trail a 16 by double digits at halftime in NCAA tournament history. From Will Warren, Stats by Will on Twitter. I always like his stuff. Duke becomes the 16th 1 seed to defeat a 16 by 9 or fewer points. The previous 15, 0 for 15 in going on to win the national title. So we'll see what can happen. Although 3 of those teams have made the Final Four, including these very Duke Blue Devils in 1986. So, Andy, a lot to come. We'll see if Duke can rebound from this. Was it a glitch, a blip, or was it a bigger sign? We'll find out starting Saturday against TCU. Now, the biggest seed line upset of the day was High Point over Wisconsin for their first ever high major win over a high major opponent. And all it took, Andy, was a game-winning layup from a guy who literally hadn't hit one all season long. We'll explain that and more, all coming up in just a second. right after I tell you about Mazda. Y'all, this is Mazda's moving the game forward moment for those who show there's more to the score than what's on screen. Andy talked about him back in the big VCU over North Carolina upset. But Terrence Hill Jr. coming off the bench for the Rams, 34 points for this dude in that upset, including making 7 of 10 from beyond the arc, 5 rebounds, 5 assists to go along with it. It's moments like this that remind us of what it really takes to raise the bar. It's that extra work off the court, dialing in every detail, giving it that extra fire, that grit, and that I never quit mentality. Mazda puts that same passion into every model. Highlights make the reel, but what it took to get there makes it count. There's more to a Mazda because there's more to you. This episode is also brought to you by FanDuel. Y'all, college basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night. From early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts, there's always action on the board. And now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. You can build any college hoops parlay that you want to, rivalry games, ranked matchups, whatever it is, and you can mix spreads and totals, player props, and so many more, and then you apply that profit boost to instantly bump up the potential payout. Looking ahead to the first tip of Friday, Kentucky, a 3.5-point favorite over Santa Clara. We'll see if the West Coast can get 2 teams into the second round. So go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following your season, all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. Head on over to FanDuel.com to get started. Again, that's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. If you've been thinking about joining the Everyday Club, right now is the time. You can get ad-free versions of the show, one-on-one messaging with us, and more. And it's a great opportunity to be locked in with us. We've got a tournament pool going on in there, lots of fun. Andy, I don't know if you hopped in. I did at the last minute. I almost forgot to do it, but it's like over 300 entries in there. Guaranteed I'm going to lose. But right now, if you want to check out the Everyday Club for free for a month, just use promo code MARCH. You can find the link down in the show notes. Andy, we got a pair of games we want to talk about. The highest seed line upset of the day, and then Nebraska finally getting off the schneid. But let's talk first about High Point, who gets an 83-82 win over the 5th-seeded Wisconsin Badgers. Andy, I got to say, I know there was some High Point love coming in, but with how well Wisconsin had been playing, with getting Nolan Winter back, even though he came off the bench, with the B-boys both going for 20, Andy, I look at this game, and there's nothing that jumps out at me and says Wisconsin lost it. So does that mean, Mr. Patton, that High Point just came in and straight up beat Wisconsin? Is that what happened?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, yeah. And it's funny because I think there was a handful of power conference teams that played on Thursday that were kind of all over the place at times this year. Like Wisconsin's resume is pretty baffling in some ways. They have some massive wins. Like their quad 1A record is excellent. They beat Michigan. They beat some of the best teams in the country. They also have some kind of mystifying losses. And on a separate note, like TCU and Ohio State were 2 teams that have this very similar, unique, not quite as good as Wisconsin's, but like similar resumes, Texas A&M to an extent as well. So it's kind of like, I don't know what we're going to see out of a lot of these teams. Like, I'm not sure how it's going to go. And A&M gets a nice W, and TCU gets a nice W, and then, Ohio State gets a nice W over TCU. And then we see kind of the other side of that. And for Wisconsin, like, I think you're right. Like, they didn't play terribly. It's not like, oh, the bad version of Wisconsin showed up and that's why High Point won. Wisconsin played fine, and they certainly could have played better. But a lot of what happened in this game was High Point's doing. It felt like they kind of controlled the narrative in this game. They made things happen in this game. And it's part of the reason that Coach Finn Clayman was so fired up after the game and saying, like, we want to play these games. Like he said, like, he was talking about Miami, Ohio as well, because this was one of the first tips of the day. So it was like this big upset by a mid-major school coming kind of off the heels of Miami, Ohio beating SMU. And he said, like, we don't get the opportunities to play these games. These teams will not play us. And like, if you put us on a neutral floor, this is what's going to happen. And like, it was coaches who win big games are always going to be a little fired up in the press conference, which is why you love them. But like, I don't think he was wrong. And I don't think he was saying it as like a shot at Wisconsin necessarily. He was straight up saying, like, we are capable of winning these games. like we collectively, like including Miami, Ohio, and other teams like this, like we can win these types of games. And if you give us the chance, if you put us in an environment where our fans are here and it's a neutral site, we can win these games. And like, he fully backed that up, because again, they didn't luck into a win because Nolan Winter didn't play or because John Blackwell had like a horrifically off night. Like those things didn't happen. And yet High Point just won this basketball game.
Man, absolutely, Andy. And so you tip your cap to them and say, great job. For High Point, first ever NCAA tournament win. For High Point, first ever high major win. They were 0-57 all time coming in. But Andy, the story, the craziest part of this whole game for me was Chase Johnson, a dude who came into this game having attempted 4 2-point shots the entire season and missing all of them. First off, that logo 3 that homie hit was maybe the most insane thing I've ever seen, in a moment where it's like, that wasn't even a desperation shot. That was just like, you know what? I think I can make this, so I'm going to pull, right? Like, that takes some cojones, my friend. And I love that Jack Golke, another March hero, is out here just tweeting Chase Johnson in all caps. So good. But Andy, there's this, Wisconsin has the ball up 82-81 at that point. I think, maybe, I can't remember fully. There's kind of a scrum under the Wisconsin basket. It squirts out, pitch ahead to Chase Johnson, who gets a run out layup, his only 2-pointer of the entire season. And it is the eventual game winner for High Point in their first ever NCAA tournament win. That, my friend, is what March Madness is all about.
It's a perfect story. Like, it's the perfect, like, and like High Point, a team that lost their head coach, Alan Huss. He goes to Creighton to become the coach in waiting. They have a new coach in Clayman, and like a program that has very little historic success. Like, this is the kind of thing that buries programs. You finally get some momentum. You finally get a coach who's there, who strings together a couple of good years in a row. You get some fan energy. You get a little bit of that juice moving forward, and then your coach leaves and you fade back to irrelevance. Like, it happens time and time again. Like, it is the most told story in college basketball from a mid-major perspective. And for High Point to buck that trend, and to a different extent, McNeese as well. They did not win against Vanderbilt on Thursday night, but like, they had a phenomenal season after losing Will Wade. But for High Point, like, 31-4, first high major win, a chance to keep moving on in the NCAA tournament. Like, it's an incredible story. And for it to be a kid who had this really weird statistical profile, who then bucked the trend of his statistical profile in the final 10 seconds of a game against a very good Wisconsin team. I mean, that's what we watch these games for. Like, that's March in a nutshell right there.
Was he out there cherry picking? Is that what happened? Did he leak out? Like that,
he leaked out a little bit, but I think Wisconsin was. I think whoever was supposed to be running out with him, like, came in to try to get the ball, and once he realized he wasn't going to get it, Johnson was out in front.
All right, I was worried it was like that dude you hate playing with at the YMCA because he never gets back on D, you know? And it's like, bro.
I mean, I think Chase Johnson's a guy you'd hate playing against for a lot of other reasons, namely he can hit 30-foot threes like it's a lay-in. So
honestly, dude, like, kudos to you. Hats off. I love it. Also, Andy, I know you went back and forth there just to make sure we've cleared it up for people. TCU beat Ohio State 66-64. I can't remember which way you ended up landing there. I was like, I don't know what Andy said. But anyway, I just want to make sure we don't get TCU fans all up in here chirping us. Nebraska, Andy, they've done it. It's over. I was concerned, not that they wouldn't win, but that it was going to be too tough for them, like that they were going to make it this huge, massive, big thing. But there was really not much drama to it. And they go and beat, and look, I know people are going to say it was just Troy. They're a 13 seed. First off, Nebraska has earned this 4 seed by the way they played this year. Right. And so they deserve the right to have, hopefully, an easier kind of game there against Troy. And I'm trying to remember, I'm looking in real time here. Troy was up 5 early at one point, but very quickly Nebraska came back and took the lead. It was never more than 5. Nebraska was up, and then just kind of once they like got settled, Andy, the Huskers just took off and blitzed this thing. I love it for Coach Hoiberg. I love it. Bryce Sanford just showing out as he has done so often this season. What a win. What a moment. Another great story that we got on Thursday.
Yeah, again, hats off to Nebraska for keeping their foot on the gas and just absolutely pummeling this Troy team here. You mentioned Sanford. He was phenomenal. 7 made threes. in this game. By the way, Troy made 8 total threes in this game. Also, Nebraska made more threes than Troy had field goals in this game. They made 14 threes. Troy had 13 made field goals. Just a phenomenal, well-rounded, dominant performance for this Nebraska team. Thomas Dowd is kind of the star player for Troy coming into this game. He played 35 minutes and he had 4 points on 1 of 11 shooting. Like, they just completely took him out of this basketball game. Again, just kept the foot on the gas, dominated, and left no doubt that they were going to win their first NCAA tournament game. And Hoiberg said after the game, like, we're not done. We're going to move on. We're like, this was obviously a huge part of our goal, and we're happy to have this monkey off our back. But like, yeah, our goal is to move on and win our next game. And we'll see how they got Vanderbilt next, which should be a fascinating matchup between two teams that got off to really rocket hot starts this year, despite not being typical basketball powerhouses. So I think it'll be fun to see how that game shakes out. But yeah, very happy for Nebraska to get their win here.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, folks, we got another 11/6. And while VCU is definitely a mid-major, I got to tell you, Texas is not. But they still got their win. They took down BYU because AJ DeBansa was great, and literally nobody else really showed up for the Cougars. We're going to talk about this matchup, talk about this game, talk about the fact that we now get Sean Miller versus Mark Few in the round of 32 as Gonzaga survives a scare against Kennesaw State. All that coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, you wouldn't show up on game day without having a plan. And you wouldn't show up to a job without all the right parts. That's why putting SupplyHouse in your starting lineup is always the right call. Here are the stats. 300,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products, 500 tried and true brands, and 90% of the country is in the 1 to 2 day delivery zone. And if you need last minute coupling, a compressor, a press tool, they've got it all, and they'll get it to you quickly. They are so clutch. And if you're a pro in the trades, you can join the MVP of rewards programs and become a trade master. Pros get exclusive member-only pricing, priority shipping, industry-leading customer service, and it's all completely free. So visit supplyhouse.com/TM to learn more about becoming a trade master. Use promo code SH5College for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com, promo code SH5College. SupplyHouse, real people, real service. Today's episode is also brought to you by Robinhood. Folks, what if sports were traded like markets? Now you can put your sports IQ to work in real time with Robinhood prediction markets. It's not you against the house. It's you participating in a live market. You can buy or sell your positions live all game long. Use your sports knowledge in the moments that really matter. Robinhood prediction markets changes the game. It's people moving the action, so when the momentum shifts, you can move with it. I always knew the game, but I never had a dynamic way to apply that knowledge. And now I can actually take part live in a market powered by the people. You're no longer just a spectator. Play by play, you decide. Trade every play with Robinhood. Now available across the U.S. Download the Robinhood app now to begin. Futures and cleared swaps trading involves significant risk and is not appropriate for everyone. Event contracts are offered by Robinhood Derivatives LLC, a registered futures commission, merchant, and swap firm. All right, folks, rolling along here as we recap a phenomenal first day of the NCAA tournament, the Thursday of March Madness. Again, it might be the best day of the year. It rivals with Friday and then Saturday and then Sunday. It is a phenomenal 4-day stretch when this field goes from 64 to 16. And one of the teams that had so much attention coming into the year, spent most of the year in the top 25, had the best player, the highest scorer in college basketball, a potential number 1 pick in the NBA draft. They only got to play one time in this tournament. BYU goes down to number 11 Texas. And Isaac, I know at least I don't have the numbers right in front of me, but we've talked about it a few times. It seems like every year, and I know that it is nearly every year, that we have had these play-in games. A team that wins a play-in game and gets into the field of 64 usually advances to the round of 32. And we talked on a show earlier this week about how likely we thought either Texas or Miami, Ohio would potentially be in terms of doing this. Obviously, we haven't seen Miami, Ohio against Tennessee yet, but we already know that at least one of them is going to do it because Texas gets their win here over AJ DeBansa and the Cougars.
That's right, Andy. We need to go back and get I feel like last year we didn't get one, but almost every other year we get a team that goes and wins the second game. I feel like that was one of the storylines I remember from last season. But yeah, I haven't re-pulled that data yet. I need to. Andy, we talked about North Carolina not getting a win and kind of how things have fallen apart a little bit after Caleb Wilson went down. The same is true here for BYU and Richie Saunders. I know Richie Saunders isn't as important to BYU as Caleb Wilson was to North Carolina, but in so many ways, he was the glue that held the big three together because of his experience at BYU, because of his leadership, because of being a veteran that could help point AJ along the way here. And I just think that's a massive part of this. Obviously, could BYU have still lost this game even with Richie? Absolutely. But we've seen these critical injuries affecting major teams. I'm very curious to see on Friday, right? Like, how does Texas Tech do without JT Toppin in their first game? And Andy, you alluded to it, you said it. AJ DeBonsa, 35 points, 10 boards, but he did have 5 turnovers, perfect at the free throw line, 12 of 12. 11 of 25 from the field, so pretty good, just shy of 50% there, but not much help, right? Like Rob Wright had 14 points, but he needed 17 shots to get there, 0 of 4 from 3. Keba Keita didn't do much of anything, fouled out. Literally no other BYU players got to double digits, and literally, Andy, no points from the bench. In fact, only one other shot attempt from the bench.
It was the AJ DeBansa show. I mean, that's truly what it was. And Texas, it's not that they were willing to let him shoot his shots. I mean, they were defending him. They were working hard on him. And he's just that good. I mean, in a game where Texas was smothering him, where everybody knew he was going to take the shot because he took 25 of their 56 shot attempts in this game, he still scored 35, and he still shot 10 of 18 on twos. Like, his three-point shot was not there. He was 1 of 7. But to shoot 10 of 18 on 2-point attempts and 12 of 12 from the line in a game where a big physical SEC team is throwing the entire kitchen sink at you. I mean, it's truly remarkable. Like, again, Boozer didn't look great in Duke's win. I'm sure that DeBansa would rather have a win than a strong performance, but I mean, he looked every bit the part in this game. He is an absolute superstar, but there was no help from the rest of this team. I mean, it was, again, Saunders, obviously a great three-point shooter, a veteran guy, brings a lot to both sides of the floor, but this team just didn't have anybody else. I mean, DeBansa took 25 shots, like you said. Wright took 17 shots. Nobody else took more than 7. You had nobody else over 10 points in this game. Kennard Davis had just 9. Kostick had 8. Keita had 5, and that was it. That's all your points right there. Meanwhile, Texas, I mean, they played really well. They could not make a free throw to save their lives in this game, and it nearly cost them down the stretch. But Vokietitis, he was, don't look at his free throw line, but everything else.
3 of 11, right? Is that right?
He's 3 of 11 from the free throw line, but he had 23 points, 16 rebounds in this game. He was excellent. Dalen Swain, you know, his stats maybe don't pop off the page, but for being their kind of like 3-and-D wing, he had 6 assists and 1 turnover in this game. You know, I mean, he had 14 points, 6 of 12 shooting. Like, just Tremont Mark was great. Like, this Texas team was rolling, and they played really well in this game. They took that momentum from that game winner that Mark hit against NC State in the play-in game. I fully will admit that Texas was the team I thought was the least deserving of the teams that made the field in terms of at-large bids. Now, with the benefit of hindsight and the benefit of the fact that BJ Edwards was not healthy for SMU, I might have flipped my pick there. But Texas has played like a team that absolutely belongs here. And frankly, I think they're going to give Gonzaga a serious run for their money, especially if Gonzaga plays like they did against Kennesaw State on Thursday.
I'm just over here applauding myself for picking Texas to beat BYU in this game in my brackets because I'm awesome. No, I'm actually usually very bad. And so when I do get one right, I'm going to pretend like I'm the most incredible thing since sliced bread.
You got to celebrate your wins, right?
Got to celebrate my way. And look, I'm just as happy to celebrate my losses and make fun of myself. I think we all know that. So I'll be, you know, you can excuse me if I'm going to celebrate a win. By the way, Andy, as we'll get to the other game in this pod, the Gonzaga Kennesaw State game. Obviously, you were at these, but the other kind of big freshmen that were in action on Thursday all won. Kingston Flemings won. Keaton Wagler and Illinois looked ridiculous in knocking off Penn, with David Mirkovich having a silly game, kind of similar to Vokietitis. And who's the one other that I'm not thinking of right now? Darren Peterson is in action Friday. Acuff and Arkansas, they just absolutely did work as well. So, Andy, you mentioned Gonzaga kind of struggling a little bit. What happened there? They pulled away a little bit. Kennesaw State got it within, what was it, 6? Was that the closest down the stretch there? And ultimately won by 9.
Yeah, it was a I was going to say it was a weird game, but if you've been watching Gonzaga basketball really since the Braden Huff injury, you talked about North Carolina not being the same since Caleb Wilson went out, and BYU not being the same with Richie Saunders. Gonzaga still finished 30-3, and so it doesn't look like the Braden Huff injury maybe impacted them as much as it really did. But like, go look at their Ken Pom offensive efficiency, where it was the last game Huff played and where it is now. It cratered. Like, this team's offense really has suffered with that. And you'd expect that from a guy who was averaging 18 points a game on 66% shooting. Like, turns out that's a lot to lose when he goes down with his injury. Gonzaga scored 33 points in the first half of this game, and they were trailing for 14 of the first 20 minutes of this game against a scrappy, tough, physical Kennesaw State team. And Gonzaga had to go on a 10-0 run to close the half. In about 90 seconds, they finally kind of kicked it into gear, took a 4-point deficit into a 6-point lead into halftime, and then extended the lead from there. But then Kennesaw State kept clawing and fighting, and Gonzaga had another, I think, a 6 or 7 minute stretch in the second half where they didn't hit a shot or didn't have a field goal. And suddenly this got really close. And then at the very, very end of the game, when it finally felt like, okay, Gonzaga's up 9, they have a safe lead, then you get a bizarre flagrant foul call on Graham Ike, where a literal Kennesaw State player ran directly into Graham's elbow. It shouldn't have been called a foul on Graham in the first place. And the fact that they looked at it and upgraded it was honestly mystifying. I have never heard at a basketball game, maybe at an NFL game, but I've never heard a basketball arena boo more loudly than I did tonight in that game. I mean, it was incredible it's obviously a pro Gonzaga crowd in Portland, but my goodness, they just let them hear it. And then they called 3 straight phantom fouls on Mario St-Superi and sent him to the bench. It was a weird end of the game. I don't really know why all of that happened, but ultimately Gonzaga survived all of that, got themselves a W. Jalen Worley, second double-double of the season. He's finally healthy from a quad contusion that's been bothering him since early February. Gonzaga survives, gets their win here over a tough Kennesaw State team. I'll tell you, I don't think Antoine Petway is going to get a job this offseason, like get promoted or get hired by a high major or a high mid-major program, but he will soon, unless he wants to stay here, because he is a darn good coach. And this team was very, very impressive. But Gonzaga found a way to outlast. And now, like I said, if they play like this offensively, they will not score enough points to beat Texas, and it could be a challenge for them.
Yeah, man, there's a couple horns out there between Dalen Swain and my goodness. We saw a little game winner from somebody else the other night, Andy, that those guys can go off. Andy, we had a couple very popular upset picks in a couple games that just didn't end up happening. South Florida was one of the trendiest. Remember a second ago when I was celebrating my Texas pick?
Yeah.
Here's me putting my hand up and saying, boy, was I all in on South Florida, and that didn't go well. Andy, Louisville, though, avoids doing what those North Carolina Tar Heels did. Louisville was up 23 in this game, ends up hanging on for dear life, winning by 4 points. No Michael Brown Jr. ended up being okay because Isaac McNeely, who just hasn't had the year I think a lot of us thought he would have for Louisville, tied a season high 23 points, 7 of 10 from beyond the arc. Really, really good stuff from him. And the other one that some people were picking was McNeese over Vandy. That didn't come to fruition either. Although, speaking of Frusin and a Fru for Louisville had a double-double, you're welcome. Vandy wins this one 78-68. McNeese was up 11 at one point in the first half, but Vandy took a 3-point lead in the halftime and ends up winning it. Game high 26, Andy, from Tyler Tanner. Another 8-10 going back to VCU. St. Louis. Andy, they started the season 24-1. Lone loss was to Stanford by 1 point. They went and lost 4 of their final 8 into the NCAA tournament, and then they just came out. And we expected a high-scoring affair here. We just thought it would be both teams, where they absolutely cooked Georgia 102-77.
Yeah, I was just going to say on that game, what really stands out to me is St. Louis, 102 points. Like you said, we said first to 100 wins. Technically, that was true in this game, although they didn't need to get quite all the way up to 100. But what stands out to me is nobody had more than 18 points for St. Louis. And for Georgia, their leading scorer had 30. Jeremiah Wilkinson hangs 30 off the bench. And if you told me that there was a game that was won 102-77 and one of the players had 30 points, there is a 0% chance that I would guess that it was the losing team. But one of the big things for Josh Schertz's team this year, there's so much story, obviously we and many others talk about Robbie Avila and the storyline with him, but this is a really balanced team. And I think for people who maybe watched this team for the first time this year, he had 12 points. He was 4 of 6, an insanely efficient 12 points. Deion Brown had 18 points on 9 of 10 shooting, which is just absurd. But yeah, if you watch this game, you saw a team that certainly didn't look like they had a star player necessarily. Whereas for Georgia, they had one guy who showed up and the rest of the team again, Santos Cyril did not even score in this game. Kanan catching 0 of 11. Goodness for him in this one. And another early exit for Georgia and a nice momentum gaining win for SLU going into their very tough following up game.
It's funny to think about. Do you remember where Kanan Catchings played last year?
BYU, right?
Can you imagine if he had gone 0 for 11 on that team today on Thursday, along with how poorly everyone else did?
Yeah.
That was not.
That was a rough one for current and former BYU players.
Last thing, Andy, was actually the first tip of the day. TCU wins this game 66-64. But man, I just thought, again, we love the stories, we love the players. Bruce Thornton, one of these few players in America at a high major school that has played all 4 years at the same school. He's been the captain all along. He's Ohio State's leading all-time scorer, Andy, and had never played in the NCAA tournament. And so, dadgummit, I usually try to stay pretty impartial here, but I really wanted Ohio State to win this game so that Bruce Thornton could get another game under his belt, and they just couldn't get it done. And I hated it for him. He didn't have just a big dynamic game, Bruce Thornton, but man, they competed. And frustratingly for them is he had that corner 3 to tie it up at 64. And Edmonds gets this go-ahead layup with about 4 seconds to go. And Andy, Ohio State had one timeout left. They immediately took it after the basket. Even though the clock would have stopped, they maybe could have thrown it at half court, called a timeout, and been in a better position. And consequently, the last play of the season for Ohio State was a nothing burger. They're down 2 with 4 seconds, and they don't even get a good it's like a beyond half court heave. I felt bad for Coach Diebler's team in that final play execution here. But big congrats to TCU. Of course, now they got to go face Duke, and so we'll see what happens.
I will add one thing before we get out of here. Tanner Toolson played 16 minutes for TCU. He did not score. He had 3 rebounds, 0 of 2 from the field. I bring that up because he also started his career at BYU. So between Tanner Toolson and Kanan Catchings, 0 of 13 would have been a bummer to have those two guys. But I don't mean they wouldn't have been worse than anybody else on the bench. They just would have taken more shots.
Oh my gosh, Andy, that's incredible stuff. All right, guys, thanks so much for being with us. Friday, we do it all over again. 12:15 p.m. Eastern on CBS kicks it all off. Number 10 seed Santa Clara against number 7 Kentucky in the Midwest region coming at you. That's going to be great. There was the last tip of the day. Oh, Mizzou and Miami. I like that one as well, Andy Patton. Going to be a couple great bookends there with a whole bunch of great meat in between. What's your go-to, like if you're having a sub sandwich there, Andy? What meat you going with?
My go-to sub sandwich, typically Italian. So a lot of salami, a lot of Italian meat. But I'm rarely picky.
All right. I like that. That made me really hungry, and it's like 2:30 my time in Central Time. I'm going to have to go snack now, and I'm very mad about that.
You're
all
welcome.
Right, you guys, tomorrow, make sure you're checking out all the fun action that's happening on Fire TV with our bracket breakdown. In addition to the studio shows each day of the tournament, where Andy and I are doing a virtual show. Some of the other players from that team will join us, whether it's Kylan Mills or Jesse Hawley or Gordon Hayward. Kylan joins us on the recap from Thursday. We'll do another one of those. We will go live again Friday night, so make plans now. Probably will be a little bit earlier because I don't think we have as many Friday night responsibilities. And so we'll be coming at you earlier on Friday, just as the action is wearing down. If you haven't subscribed on video and audio, do it now. If you haven't joined the Locked On College Basketball Discord or the Everydayer Club, those links are in the show notes. As always, apologies to the Lawyer family, although we'll see if they can win today. Let's go Wild Popes. They're playing today. And the McBruin. Wow, all 3 of our shouts are playing on Friday, Andy. That's really cool stuff. So we'll get to talk about them on Friday night. As always, though, can't wait to talk to you again tomorrow. But until then, peace.